Hello, this is Jesus Castillo for rubyguides.com, and in this video we're going to talk about nil. What is nil? Where does it come from? What can you do with it? Or rather, what should you do when you see nil? So nil, the first thing you need to know is that nil is just an object, and it comes from a class named Nil class. So we can see that like this. So there is only one nil object that comes from this Nil class. Another interesting thing about it is that it has a unique object ID. And if you are in a 64-bit system, it will be 8. And in a 32-bit system, it's 4. And that ID is always the same. So that's an interesting thing to know about it. And where does nil come from? Well, let's say we have an array like this. And we ask for some index. For example, if we ask for index 0, we get 1 because that's the first element in the array. But what happens if we ask for an index that does not exist, like let's say 5? Alright, well, we get nil. So nil is usually used by Ruby to tell you that this value is not available, it's missing, it's empty. And sometimes what happens is that you try to call a method on this and you will get a very common error, the no method error exception. So let's take a look at that. Let's see, we do that, let's do B. And then we assume that B has a valid value because we didn't see this is an invalid index for some reason. It happens. Then we call a method like, I don't know, size. And what happens is that we get this no method error. Undefined method size for nil class. So I'm sure you have seen this error a few times. And when this happens, most of the time the problem is exactly this. That you are using an index that's invalid. You are using some other method that returns nil because it can do what you ask it to do, something like that. So when you get this kind of error, your job is to go and find out what caused, why is this nil being returned and from where it's being returned. So that's one thing. And nil also has a few methods. Since nil is an object, it has a few methods of its own. And we can find these methods if we look up the nil class documentation. And you can see the class of the singleton object nil. And here singleton refers to the singleton design pattern, which means there is only one copy of this object. So this avoids having different nil objects, which could be a bit strange. So we only have one nil. And the methods are mostly conversion methods. So you can see to A, to C for complex numbers, to H, to I, And you will notice that this all return what we will call like default or base values, what you will consider empty for those things. So if you do nil to h, what you get is an empty hash. If you do to a, you get an empty array. So this, we can see how this theme of nil, meaning empty, is reflected by these methods. To s, an empty string. Oh, and one more thing you need to know about nil is that along with false, which is also an object, along with false are the two only values, we could say the two only objects that evaluate to false, what we call falsy. So falsy means they are equivalent to false, and everything else in Ruby is true. So in other languages, you have, like the C programming language, you have 0 equals true. But in Ruby, that's not correct, because the only things that are equal to true is everything but nil and false. And I believe there is a method where we can see that happening, like maybe like this, for example. So you can see if object is nil or false, returns false, otherwise return true. But you can test this if you do like an if statement. If nil puts 1 to 3, you can see it didn't print 1 to 3. But if you do anything else, like if 1 puts 1 to 3, then we print 1 to 3. So you don't have to do, if you are checking for nil or false, you don't have to do your object, like let's say a equals nil. You don't have to do that. Because it's already equivalent to false. So I hope I make that point clear enough. I think that's everything I have for you about nil. You can see there's nothing magical about it. It just follows the rules of Ruby. It is an object, has a class, has methods. And that's all. That's about it. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel so you can get more videos like this. And also, I want you to visit my website, rubyguides.com, where you will find over 50 Ruby tutorials. Okay, so go there and read some articles, subscribe to the newsletter, and yeah, thanks for watching.